Hello and welcome to the In the Money Players podcast. This is our picks show for January 1st, 2021. How good does it feel to say that? First show of many this year on our network. Very happy to be with you, PTF, here in the Degenerate Flophouse in Saratoga Springs, New York. And going to have a couple of guests, two different segments on the show today. The first one, not with the usual co-host, but with a very frequent guest and somebody that I know for a fact listeners always like to hear from. You know him from his work at the Buyer Speed Figure team, writing he's done over at stevebick.com, his fantastic Twitter, and also as part of the TwinSpire's expert picks very recently. Nick Tammaro, welcome back to the show. How are things, my man? Happy New Year.
Good morning. Happy New Year, my friend. How are you?
Things are good. We're getting the year off to a good start. I'm just hungover enough that the first Bloody Mary is going to taste really, really good. But I'm really looking forward to knocking out the work before I start drinking.
Absolutely. Hair of the dog, right? You got to get after it early on.
That's the plan anyway. There's a couple of general topics about New York racing I want to pick your brain about before we get into the specifics of this late pick 5 on Saturday. And we'll start with the one that is, I think there's a little bit more to unpack maybe. This very interesting unearthing of the rule about husband and wife riders on the New York circuit, where apparently, according to some New York gaming statute, these will have to be coupled entries between the riders involved. And reading the rule really got me going. I think everybody's insta reaction was, well, what about brothers? Okay, I get that. But then reading the rule, there was something about fathers and sons entries are supposed to be coupled. And I was like, oh, yeah, because Alan Jerkins and Jimmy Jerkins and Steven Jerkins, they had all those runners coupled for all those years. Oh, wait, that didn't happen. Nick, what is going on here?
You know, and the saddest thing about it is that, believe me, and I have no self-interest other than as a horse player. You know, everybody comes out immediately and is like, oh, Naira this and Naira that. And believe me, Naira wants no part of this rule either. They don't want horses coupled. And we'll talk about a race where it happens tomorrow. But they want as many betting interests as possible. So it's a rule, I guess, that somehow somebody just turned over the right book and found it, because I think Trevor McCarthy and Katie Davis got married a couple of weeks ago. And ironically, of course, Katie Davis's brother trains horses, her father trains horses, her sister rides horses, and her brother rides horses. So, I mean, and now she's married to another rider. So I guess if so what happens if worlds collide? What happens if Dylan stays over the night at Trevor and Katie's house? Are all of those runners coupled the next day, or vice versa? So they better be careful about it. It's a good thing we still have to socially distance and things like that. I mean, this is about the dumbest thing I've ever heard. I get the spirit behind it, but, you know, it seems very, very foolish. And you know, the thing that it does is it takes out the built-in check on this stuff. And what I mean by that is, if you and I train horses, or if I train your horse and you're my owner, and we ride Katie Davis or Trevor McCarthy, and we see that a less than stellar effort is put forth, of course the stewards aren't going to do anything about it. But if we notice that, then we replace him or her, right? We're the ones that are going to be watching that stuff. And so the ironic thing about it, as the Twitter community exploded, is that, you know, there's been a lot of clamoring over the years for Irene Ortiz and Jose Ortiz to get called out a bit on some things that they've done. I think the whole thing's been overblown for the most part. But I mean, look, there have been times where I've thought, oh, that doesn't look good. I mean, hell, watch the Woodford Reserve from 2019 in upper stretch when Jose's on breaking rules, and he makes sure that he gets out of the way so Irad can get through on bricks and mortar. You know, and are things like that illegal? No, but they're going on, and we don't know anything about whether they're even being discussed by the stewards. So it was one of those things. And I mean, everybody, and I think even Dave Brennan was probably maybe a touch taken aback by everybody jumping on and being like, what about brothers? What about brothers? What about brothers? Because they were hoping that in April, when both of them are back, maybe they're subject to the new rule.
I do see the point that a husband and wife have a financial partnership in a way that brothers don't. But then when you read the letter of the rule and it makes that stipulation about members of the household, to me, and what we've seen over the years, this rule not being applied, the biggest reaction is just head shaking, I think. And I think it's in everyone involved's best interest to get rid of such a rule. And like you said, NYRA especially would be with us on this point if they could speak freely on the matter regarding this particular New York Gaming Commission idea. What do you know about what it takes to get these rules changed? I imagine it's pretty darn complicated.
Yeah, I'm moving mountains would probably be the best description. I don't know specifically, but given how slow changes have come about over the years, I imagine it would be a pretty arduous process. And it sounds as if it was something that was kind of unearthed unbeknownst to NYRA. And you wonder, I think Katie Davis's agent is Gary Contessa. So, he's somebody that would have probably known. And I want to say, is McCarthy using Steve Rushing again? So obviously that's Irad Ortiz's agent. He did in the past. I mean, these are people that really know the game. So, I mean, and it doesn't change their financial interest per se, but it does so obviously for the game and to some extent for trainers and owners. So, yeah, I would imagine it's something that if NYRA could get it changed tomorrow, they'd be working on it immediately. But I guess it'll be something. It's probably like that wacky jockey agent rule that we were talking about, a few weeks ago. And everybody kind of said afterwards, we really hope NYRA can do something about this and NYRA can do something about it. I was like, guys, I mean, the State Gaming Commission is in charge of this stuff. And that's not NYRA. That's really an entity that operates independently of NYRA, but unfortunately makes all the rules.
You'd like to think that with the political clout that NYRA has, that there could be some inroads made to changing both of those rules. You'd love to think that. You'd love to think that the kerfuffle and the horse players picking up on these things and making a little bit of a stink would help give them a little bit of political muscle to do something about it. And I think they'll probably be trying. But like you say, it does take time. Curious to get more updates on this as we go, but wanted to mention it with you. The other thing I wanted to talk with you about before we dive into the races is this announcement that for January, at least, the Pick Six in New York is going to have a daily mandatory payout. The 20-cent limit is sticking around. What do you think about this idea, Nick? What does it mean for you as a horse player? What does it mean, do you think, in general for the economy of this bet?
Look, as a rule, I'm wholeheartedly against jackpot bets. They've become much too prevalent. They're counterproductive as far as what we want to do as horse players. And I guess what I mean by that is if there's a real push amongst horse players to have a discussion with track management about lowering takeout, then on a daily basis, when we're pouring money into pools with effective takeouts in excess of 40 to 50%, we're cutting off our nose to spite our face. There's just no other way to put it. So I think that NYRA was sort of late to the party, I guess you could say, on the Empire Six. And I don't know if they ever realized the same kind of impact that like Gulfstream has with the Rainbow Six. But I mean, remembering, of course, that Gulfstream had virtually no Pick Six handle and then put in a jackpot bet that they kind of, I don't want to say manipulated, but that they worked so that the carryover was as big as possible and they could generate the most handle. NYRA's done a few things with this thing along the way to try and I guess get a few different perspectives. I know they paid it out every 8 days last winter. My hope with this is that it's done with the best of intentions. And I guess what I mean by that is if 19 days go by and you're paying this thing out every day and handle is not appreciably more than it was on a per day basis, even taking the payout day into consideration, well, then it was set up to fail, right? Because that's a small sample. And I think there's 19 racing dates in January. So I hope that it's done in good faith. And I hope, and I'm sure they have, the people that made that decision have modeled out what was getting bet into it last year at this time, what was getting bet into it in the last month or so, obviously taking into consideration what goes on in January as far as the racing products goes. You're talking about fewer betting interests and things like that. So I guess what I mean by it is if I decide that somebody tells me that if I drink a lot of water for the month of January, I'm going to lose weight, and I drink a hell of a lot of water in January and I'm only down a few pounds, I say, screw it. In February, I'm going to do whatever I want. That was foolish, right? I didn't have the right intentions. So I hope that it's not done in that particular vein, because I think there's an avenue for racetracks to get back to a conventional pick six, whether it's a daily pay like this or something that has a carryover component, maybe at a slightly higher denomination. Maybe we need to talk about a 50-cent pick six or a $1 pick six, but there's got to be something that can sort of whet the appetite of the players that is independent of a jackpot bet, because the jackpot bets to me just have a deleterious effect on the game. And I think they really negatively affect churn. And I'm hopeful that that's something that we now see. Hopefully this is part of a trend that begins to reverse a bit.
And I think it could be a bit of a work in progress, like you're saying, assuming it is being done with the best of intentions. I think you're right. There's probably a sweet spot, a way to tweak this that could be overall more beneficial. What I worry about the 20-cent daily payout, it's certainly better than the jackpot in my view, but obviously you're saying there will never be a carryover. So you're gonna lose the old school, what was great about the higher denomination pick six. You are going to keep. I'm very curious to see how the general public reacts to the keeping of the 20 cent. It is possible that some of what was appealing about the Empire Six that we've seen in all these jackpot bets is just smaller players being able to work that lower denomination. And so it'll be an interesting experiment to see how much of that was the appeal of the bet versus the, to me, very much cynically marketed life-changing score aspect that didn't really exist for those outside of the elite turf club. So
you were not of the opinion that it only takes 20 cents to take down an empire.
I did love that. I'll admit that I wish I'd written the line, but
it's a great marketing line, right? No, it really is. It's a great line from a marketing perspective. But yeah, I mean, looking at something like if Woodbine has a 20-cent pick five. They actually introduced a second one late in the meet this year, but they have a 20-cent pick five that has always run on races 2 through 6, and on weekends it was doing six figures in handle, and that's at a 25 to 26% takeout. You would think that if they could do that kind of money and that kind of bet, this Empire Six on a daily basis. The issue, of course, being 8 race cards, you're going to cram in 2 pick fives and a pick six. Could be a little difficult. A couple of pick fours as well. But I mean, this thing's supposed to be doing 150 to 180,000 a day, I would say.
I'm much more inclined to play it. I mean, I would not have played the Empire version except on the mandatory payout day. And this bet I'm tempted to support just because it's not the old thing, even though I think there might be more work to be done. But anyway, it's a work in progress. It's a topic that we'll return to. But I did want to get your quick thoughts on those bits of news coming out of the NYRA circuit. And with that, I think we should move on and talk about these races. We're going to start off talking about this pick five on Saturday. It begins with race number 5. 2:20 Eastern. We're at 1 mile on the dirt, 4 and up. Claimers 12-5. And Nick, we'll start you off with this one. How do you want to get things rolling?
This is a tough spot, no doubt about it. It's not the toughest leg in the sequence, other than kind of the last is a bit of a minefield, which we've seen on a pretty regular basis. The concern that you have, of course, with a horse like Creative Style on the far side, Danny Garland claimed at 25. He's dropping him in for 12-5 now. That's obviously a hugely negative sign. But Danny Garland's done incredibly well with his claims over the last couple of years specifically. He's better than 50%. And, this is a horse who you worry a bit about with the claimers having been through the ringer a tad. Went from Eddie Barker to Rob Atras to Cantor Mossy to Rudy, now to Gargan and Y to 12-5. So he's going to be the 5-2 favorite. He's coming off a race that actually looks a little bit better on paper than it was, in my opinion. It was a very slow pace in a race taken off the turf, and Super Dude just simply outfinished him. I thought there were a couple of interesting alternatives. I think it's prudent to be very careful with these Claudio Gonzalez horses that come up from the Mid-Atlantic, and Lucky Ramsey's a horse that's been competitive around these parts in the past. Did face quite a bit better competition the last time he was up here, and he's the type that can be a little bit closer to the pace, I think, than maybe a horse like Creative Style in a conventionally run race. I also thought, and he's a little bit of an outsider, but Ectobar is the one to catch in this field, and he's facing dramatically weaker competition than he did in his last start. So, again, this is a situation where you have a horse that's really been through the ringer, having gone through the Jorge Navarro operation and then to Mikey Tenuzzo, and is now with Bruce Levine. But he's been competitive, obviously, at every level in the past, and might just be one of those situations where an old guy gets the lead and forgets to quit.
That was my top pick, X the Bar, the 4, for that same reason. Just the drop that he needs, the speed to be a factor from the outset. You can't key, I don't think, just because when you go back to the races that would win, they were with Navarro, but there's still a lot to make sense here. I agree with you on Lucky Ramsey, just a tough old knocker, liable to be running late, and if the race unfolds in that way, as likely a winner as any. So I like the idea. I think the 4 and the 5 are really good partners in your horizontals. With I think you potentially are going to end up with the best speed and the best closer. The only other one I was definitely going to use was the 2 hardcore Folklore, who's done well enough for the new barn while stretching out, and I just thought could get a good trip from between those 2 other ones, maybe sitting mid-pack and trying to finish. So I was going to try to get out with those 3. As for you, it sounds like you're going to mostly be 4 and 5 here, Nick. Were you going to try to use the 9 as a backup or what?
Yeah, I'll use the 4 and 5 mainly. I'll have the 1, 2, 9 as backups. And I think Hardcore Folklore is an important horse to talk about just a little bit because this is a 12-5 claimer, and this time of year there are situations where 12-5 claimers are hardly big departures from $10,000 claimers, and then there are situations like with this horse where I think the 10 that he's coming out of was quite a bit weaker than this 12-5. That being said, this is a horse that's been competitive in the past and clearly is getting better for Wayne Potts' barn. So I think he's well worth including. But it's a situation where if you're picking up the PPs for Aqueduct on a random day, and of course if you're not seeking out the advice of the expert picks on Twin Spires, then you want to try and keep as much track of the claiming races that you see when you are handicapping, just to get a sense of whether something might be just a nominal drop in class or an actual one.
What tools do you use to make those assessments? I'll admit, often I cheat and find that the Timeform US race ratings can be super useful in that regard. What other tools do you have in the toolbox for that?
Yeah, other than speed figures, things like that, race ratings, you want to look at subsequent speed figures for horses coming out of it. And then, the more you immerse yourself in the actual circuit, you're going to know that, for example, Playwright and Real Dan comes out of a really low percentage barn. He was third in the race that Hardcore Folklore comes out of. And Playwright's been in care of Danny Gargan and a couple of other trainers since, had kind of gone wrong form-wise. So really it's a matter of making notes. If you take trip notes in Formulator or Timeform US, put some notes in there about the horses that this horse ran against. And I think it's going to help you reference that in the future.
Leg B is race 6, 2:50 Eastern is the scheduled post time. We're at 6 furlongs on the dirt. 3-year-olds, maiden, or 3-year-olds and up, maiden special weights. And I thought this one set up real nice for Jill's A Hot Mess, number 1. Ran pretty well off the layoff, and I thought should move forward. And I felt like any further improvement would make her a likely winner. This was one I was willing to press in this spot. And then I was thinking about maybe using a couple of backups. Number 9, Hip number 1, caught a little cash on debut, showing speed and tiring. Just felt like a logical second-time starter who could improve. And then Breakfast at Bonnie's, I thought was a firster, might be willing to include for a strong debut sire and a barn that can have him ready. But Nick, what do you think? How do we want to make it through leg B?
Yeah, I thought Breakfast at Bonnie's was a must include. This is a horse that they took for $80,000 at the Facey-Tipton sale and the Timonium back in June, the sale, June or July, sale that's usually held right after the Preakness. And, they bought a Lauban for $80,000. Probably the owner probably told his friends, I bought a Lauban for $80,000. They said, who? And now it looks like it could have been a phenomenal purchase with the way Lauban's progeny has done in their first crop. This horse worked 21-2 at Timonium, which is fast. Obviously, that's a 5/8 track, and so you shade 22 when they actually time it for 2 furlongs. You're moving. The dam here is a half to closing argument, so there's actually quite a bit of route influence on the bottom side. Yeah, I thought hip number 1 made perfect sense. First time late 6 after racing as a 2-year-old without it, and showed speed, took some money that day. So did Gracefully Wild. So I thought that maybe both of them you might want to take a little bit of a look if you're playing the pick 5 at the doubles into those 2. Jill's A Hot Mess is clearly the horse to beat. She hasn't really collected enough excuses to be kind of a seconditis type or a non-winning type. And I think getting the Lasix for the first time and being able to show some interest from the inside will certainly help.
If I wanted to tier your picks into sort of mains and backups, like I'm looking to do for this bonus ITM Plus content, how would you shake out your numbers?
I would go 169 as ace, and I would have the 2-4, probably the 2 and 4 as backups.
All right, I like it. Let's move on to race number 7. It goes at 3:20 a mile on the dirt, 4 and up, 40K claimers, non-winners of 2 lifetime this time around. And we'll start it back with you, Nick. What do you like here?
Well, I mean, it's a matter of what you want to do with Perceived, I would say, for Chad Brown coming back off a long layoff. This is a horse that broke his maiden at fourth asking against maiden special weight foes. Speed figure wise, he would fit in a one other than on this circuit. But I think part of it is that Chad wants to spot him where he can win, where he can get claimed. And he's very likely to get claimed. He's almost as likely to win. And so, you wonder a lot of times. I'll rely on stats occasionally to see whether these kinds of horses perform well. And over the last 5 years, moving dirt horses in for a tag for the first time, specifically at Belmont and Aqueduct, Chad's 52% with a 279 ROI. So it's 15 of 29.
I'm told that's good.
And I wanted to look it up because I thought, well, it dumps all those horses in at Saratoga. And so I took Saratoga out, and the numbers actually went up, which sort of supported my theory that he does dump a lot of horses in for a tag at Saratoga. But this is a horse who I think I think when push comes to shove, Chad would tell you that he probably would need to get a little bit lucky in the right one other than, and he's going to pretty much be okay in any 2 life. So I'm going to single him. I don't have really any other clever ideas. First Line is a horse who's gone backwards as his trainer's performance has sort of faded over the last couple of months. He does have some speed and an aggressive jockey in it and the blinkers. And so I think there's a little bit to like there. I'd use him as a backup. I don't understand Jerusalem Gates, and I'm interested in hearing if you have any clever idea. I don't know why a PA would get taken from John Service, move to Linda Rice to face claimers.
I was against. I just couldn't get my head around Jerusalem Gates in this spot, and I wasn't thinking that the trip was going to work out either, because not only is First Line in here, but the other goofy one I would use as a backup has a little bit of speed, Color Me Patsy, who, you need some imagination here, but this is an N2L, and this is a horse who was competing in stakes in early 20, and the lone race since total throwout. Then there's that bullet work, which you need to decide, I guess, if that is a for sale sign or a sign of readiness. But I did think just for the smallest increment as a backup, Color Me Patsy made a tiny little bit of sense. I think that stat, I was a little bit torn between using First Line and Perceived equally. The stat you just dropped makes me think that Perceived should be, at the very least, pressed a little, if not a lone A in this spot. Any other thoughts on how you might play this one?
I'm gonna lone A Perceived, and I'm gonna use First Line and Sixto and Jerusalem Gates as backups. Sixto is actually a horse I thought you could make a slight case for as a new gelding off the layoff back in Eric Eo's care. He was a very impressive debut winner. Good enough so that they were ready to start to go towards graded stakes. So I think there's a little bit to like there. But yeah, the other problem I had with First Line is that, and I remember unleashing a string of profanities after he won at Saratoga because I needed the second horse, was, that race still continues to exist in Never Never Land. He's never run anything close to it. And I think the frustration at that point in the meet was that this barn was running a lot of horses at that level. And it was like, enough already, where are these races coming from? And he's never duplicated it. And now it seems like his form's kind of sliding. So that's the concern. But I do think the class drop and the blinkers going on make him enough horse to use prominently as a backup. I'm just going to use him only as a backup.
I think that's right, and that's the way I'm leaning after we talk about it. The meaningful drop. There are I feel like I'm a little more positive about the body of work just because they require a little imagination, but I can conjure you some excuses for some of the last races in terms of trips and not breaking well, and it just comes down to the a little bit of pace makes the race, but there's a certain scenario in my head where this one just shakes loose, where Color Me Patsy's no good at all, and Jerusalem Gates, who I'm against, doesn't show that much speed, and then all of a sudden this thing's walking on the front end, and I need to have for at least a little bit. So we'll call it for me. We'll call it 4-1-9 for Nick. The 4 is a single A with the 1, 3, and 8 as backups, and with that, we're going to move on to our featured race, the Gravesend, race number 8, 3:50 post time, 6.5 furlongs, and 100,000 in the pot. I thought that Stan the Man ran better than it looked the last day, number 5. Just left with a ton of work to do, nearly got there in the end. I'd like to see what Stan the Man could do here, Nick, with a more positive ride. That said, I'm not going to be a hero. I think I also need to use number 4, My Boy Tate, the obvious alternative, who ran very well last time to the excellent funny guy. Has to reverse the form with the top pick, but that could just come down to trips. So the 5 and 4 for me, I think that's. I think I'm just going to try to stand with those two and get out here. Is it that simple, or you have something a little more creative?
This is an interesting bunch, and even though there's only 5, but I say this a lot, and I'm sure people grow tired of it, but you really can make a case for all of them, and I really could. I think the horse that I would probably say is my 5th choice is Happy Farm, who, is probably going to be loose in this race, and it's just going to be a question of whether off the layoff, moving out of the care of Jason's service, right? Yeah. What is going to go on? It's like, this horse went from a guy who got arrested for using performance-enhancing drugs, potentially, or accused of it, and now into the care of a trainer who, quite honestly, is under trial for her license. So, not for things involving performance-enhancing drugs or anything like that, but Happy Farm is potentially going to be an orphan at some point. He needs to find a home. That being said, he ran races last year that were easily good enough to win this, and got an aggressive jockey and an inside post. I think the move, and this was a very quiet move, of the distance of this race from 6 to 6.5 furlongs, I have no idea why, actually will work against him. And that'll probably keep him from being able to wire this field. We've also seen, and I've got some data on it specifically with Rob Atras, but we've seen people take over these horses from Jason Service, and they've underperformed horribly. So I drafted as horse the fall highway handicap that I would want to bet. As far as a multi-race bet goes, unfortunately, I'm glad I singled Proceeds in the last leg, because I'm going to have to use quite a few of these. Drafted has that really attractive Timeform US running line for me, which is trying to rally into a slow pace. And the fall high weight was a really interesting race in that they were going slow, and none of the jockeys realized they were going slow. That was a gapped out field down the backstretch, and they were crawling. And it was almost like when everybody realized it, Share the Ride had gotten such a huge tactical advantage by then that the race was basically over. I do think Stan the Man ran great. I would be inclined to mainly use the 2 and 5. My problem with My Boy Tate is that while he duplicated the big effort at Parks 2 back last time, he did it while Manny Franco tried to back the pace down going 6 furlongs. And I don't know if the same situation is going to exist here. I guess the question becomes, does he get the jump on everybody by being the closest to Happy Farm and maybe grabbing the baton inside the quarter pole? So with that said, I think you have to use him as well. And then, is it really going to shock you? And obviously a wet track would help. Is it really going to shock you if Pete's Play Call wins this race? First off, a claim by Rudy. This is a horse with races that are easily fast enough in the past. Obviously, if there's rain lingering, then it would help because he's a little bit better on a wet track, but he's very good on dry tracks as well. So that's why I think that it's ultimately one where I'm going to use everybody. Maybe not necessarily everybody as A's, but I don't think I can separate them that much.
Based on what you're saying, I'm going to tier you 2 and 5 as A's and 1, 3, and 4 as backups. Does that
exactly.
that suits you? All right, let's move on to leg E, our nightcap. Aqueduct's 9th race, 4:20 post time, a mile on the dirt, $16,000 non-winners of 2 lifetime. Nick, you mentioned before it's a bit wide open, but I found myself with a couple of leans in here. How are we going to get paid?
Yeah, and this is the first instance, at least, of us talking about Katie Davis and Trevor McCarthy being coupled. Where, Unbridled John and Freedom Force are coupled for wagering purposes, and they have they don't really have complementary running styles. I do think Freedom Force is a horse that would be at his best forwardly placed, and obviously Unbridled John sort of only has one way to go. This looks like a race that should be run at a pretty strong early pace. I'm hopeful that can help a little bit of a price horse that I like, Super Wicked Charm, who I think when push comes to shove is a better dirt horse. I think, and granted, I don't want to spend a whole lot of time on a soliloquy about Eduardo Jones's training methods, but I think that running this horse at 6 furlongs, 6.5 furlongs last time was designed to sort of sharpen him up a little bit because he has a tendency to really drop out. And it's hard to win races on the dirt with horses that want to start spotting their rivals, 10, 12, 15 lengths. So I'm hopeful that Louis Cardenas is going to keep him a little bit more involved early. This horse is going to be a big price. His best dirt races have been at Aqueduct. So I'm going to try him. I want to use Bronxville as well. I'm very concerned about the race flow. So I thought Bronxville ran a kind of a sneaky good race last time, up on a hot pace. No Lime's a good horse for a 2-life claimer at the $16,000 level. So I wanted to use those two. I think as far as I'm going to use the entry because I think that both of them are the quickest horses on paper. I guess my only real opinion is that of the horses that are going to be bet, I also want to use Beachside as well, who I think is spotted realistically second off the claim. I don't like Doubly Blessed. And so that's my thing. These horses that have run exclusively on turf tend to take a ton of money when they eventually get to dirt because everyone forecasts, oh, it's an Empire Maker and a Bernardini mare. You know, he's obviously going to like the dirt. This horse was in the care of two trainers that know how to win dirt races. So why did it take this long? Yeah, that was basically my big opinion, I guess.
I think you're right. It's on figures one that I would want. If I had more clever, strong opinions early, I wouldn't want to get beat by Doubly Blessed in a spot like this because of the figures, but because I'm pretty, straightforward going into this race, I think you can maybe try to create a little bit of equity leaning against one, as you point out, that's had ample opportunities to run on the dirt. You mentioned the two that I wanted to press, and that's Bronxville, who I did feel like was a candidate, if not to ultimately be best speed, even if not in the lead the whole time. It just went too fast, too soon, off the long break last time. Felt like one that could move up from that run, and it just didn't look like a group with any world beaters. I could see a scenario where Bronxville just trips out from on or near. And then Beachside getting the needed drop for the new barn. That last race, I feel like, is just a toss. Wheeling back in 6 days, just felt like one who should go better. So I wanted, 8 and 9 as A's, and then as many as you could afford in different combinations as backups. But I do think that was a very clever case you made for the 7 and the potential training move, darkening up that form a bit. If you look back, there are some races that would do it, and you're looking at double-digit odds. So you mentioned 7, 8, 9, and the entry. How would you tier those out on the fly here for me?
Yeah, I would use 1, 7, 8, 9 as A's, and I would back up. I guess one horse that I would probably mention that easily has dirt races that are good enough to win this is Tiergan, who I would use as a backup. Bill Mott has very Bill Mott-like numbers, moving routers from turf to dirt. That's taking out the off the turf runners. 8 for 67 with about $1.60 ROI, so pretty Mott-like numbers, as I said. But I would use Tiergan as a backup. I would use Mental Model as a backup. So I would back up with 2, 5, and that would basically be it for me. I wouldn't really need to use Doubly Blessed. If I was that concerned about him winning, I wouldn't have an opinion on wild Eduardo Jones horses.
You got to take a stand somewhere, that's for sure. Nick, this was so much fun. Very great to have you with us here to do some capping and also talk about New York racing in general. We'll have you back on soon, my man. Happy New Year.
Sounds great. Happy New Year to you too. Thanks for having me.
And now we are back with the aforementioned usual co-host of this program. He is on the road, it looks like. He is somewhere between the planet Texas and Lex Vegas, maybe. I haven't talked to the man in a couple of days. We need to catch up. As you've probably figured out by now, I'm talking about the guy we refer to around here as the People's Champion, Jonathan Kinchin. What's up, JK?
You wouldn't believe me. I am currently in Memphis, Tennessee at a supercharger in a Tesla that I don't own, that I rented, but let me tell you why I did this.
I'm glad you clarified that you rented and hadn't boosted the car, because then we'd have a whole other story.
No. It's my brother had a Tesla and he had a good experience with his Tesla. I've considered getting one. I do a lot of driving back and forth to get Austin, and I just, Breeders' Cup victories, had a good year, thought about getting a Tesla, but I wanted to kind of feel it out first, see how it all worked.
Victory, technically you were second.
Well, the check's still cashed, but so I decided that I was going to rent a Tesla to drive to Lexington to hang out for about a week and a half, and I realized that if I flew there, I would have to fly, and then I fly back. I got to quarantine, and I got to take a test, 3 days before I get on. It just was a nightmare. So I figured I'm going to drive, and I said, why not enjoy trying this Tesla? Well, the guy whose Tesla I rented, he got like the baby Tesla with like the 200 miles per charge thing. So long story short, I've had to stop like every 2 hours, and and I made it to Little Rock last night and gave up. I didn't even make it to Marshall Graham's house to stay in his back house. And so now I'm doing a podcast from the Tesla. It is a great car. I really, really like it. It's got a lot of really cool things. But if you get a Tesla, don't get the baby battery. It's a little bit annoying.
The back house at the Graham household, that's where they put the second place finishers.
Exactly. The champions sleep in the main house.
Good stuff. That is an amazing, very JK story, though. I have to admit, I absolutely love it. So New Year's Eve, when the ball dropped, where were you?
Well, I was in Central Time Zone, so I had my East Coasters calling to say Happy New Year, and I was driving. Actually, I think what I was honestly doing when I got the first one is I was in Texarkana at a supercharging station in front of an Olive Garden and an Outback, and I got a ribeye, French fries, and Caesar salad from Outback. It was horrendous. It reminded me of when you told me that don't waste meals. I wasted a meal. So I was charging at that time, and then the second time I was at a supercharged station, I think in Little Rock. It's been an adventure, but a fun adventure. It's been fun, and it'll be fun once we get to Kentucky. Now you're going to Kentucky for a week and a half. I can only assume you're looking to sell some ads for our new In the Money Media Bloodstock Ventures. Is that right? No, I think I'm probably just laying low. I brought my monitor. I brought my this is a must buy if you've never had one of these before. This like these massage guns.
Oh,
I've been using this on the drive. You haven't seen these commercials?
No, I don't really watch. I watch tons of screens, but it's basically Netflix, Disney Plus, or a horse racing feed. Yeah, they go good. And I got the new. You haven't seen this yet? Have you seen the new cover to the new computer cover I got? Yeah, that's very, very fresh with the numbers. Huh? It looks similar to the shirt design you teased a while back. Oh, the shirt design. It's a new design. I think I said we were cooking something up. I wasn't lying. We'll be talking about that. We'll talk more about the bloodstock stuff. We got some big news coming on that front for folks that miss the In the Ring Pedigree podcast. And we do hear from you from time to time. There's going to be more than enough to whet your appetite as far as new content goes in terms of horse racing industry stuff. But we're not here today to talk about any of that. We're here to talk about our latest and one of our first partners, Santa Anita. They're back in the fold. What a meet they're off to, JK. And I'm not just saying this because they're our partners and because we're friends with so many of the folks there, but it feels to me like this is a meet where if you've taken some time off from Santa Anita because of the difficulties the last couple of years, you got to be paying attention again, because this is Santa Anita racing that really commands a horse player's brain power. Yeah, one of the things I noticed is that they've really kind of the races and the conditions they're offering have really opened it up to have some full fields. I saw a condition, I think it's today actually. We were recording this on Friday. I think that the race is today. They have a maiden race today for horses that are 5 and up or were sold for under $150,000 or have made 5 starts. Interesting. So they have a mate. They're creating these conditions to kind of open up and let people have a chance to run their maidens protected, their maiden special weights, and not have to run into the Bob Bafferts and to the Michael McCarthy's and the John Sadlers and the Doug O'Neills that are you can slip in there under the radar. And another thing I've noticed is that they've been running at different distances. I saw a 1.25 mile turf race that was like an allowance type. They're really kind of mixing it up, giving horses options. And I think it's also important to note how important that 6.5 turf distance was for Santa Anita. Obviously, we'd love for it to be down the hill, but you're getting horses cutting back, but you're also allowing horses to stretch out. So that sets up for a field of 12 horses because you got 6 going long, 6 going short. Here you go. When you're only offering the flat 5, there's only 6 horse fields there. You're only offering the mile, 6 horse fields there. And I think that's kind of what they're doing. It's been good. I've really enjoyed playing it so far this year. Great points about some of the why the 3-day racing calendar certainly hopefully is going to continue to work out. Only thing missing is us being able to be out there and hang in the Eddie Logan Suite. But who knows? Maybe before the end of the meet. The meet does extend a while. We're going to be working with Santa Anita all meet. That means on our picks show that we're going to be doing the pick 5 every weekend. For those that can't get enough, also, JK does his expert picks over at twinspires.com for Santa Anita every day. So if you want his mental buy-in, you're not just getting it once a week, you're getting it every day they run via our friends over there at Twinspires. So lots of good stuff going on. We talked about their contest last weekend. What do you know about what they have coming up in terms of contests, and how did you fare last weekend?
I don't know what they have going on, and this is it's kind of embarrassing. I really don't remember how I did.
I'm going to assume that means you didn't win.
No, I didn't win. Oh, I did okay, I think. I didn't play in because I don't have an ExpressBet account. I didn't play in my name. No funny business on the up and up. I just had someone else play and I told them what to do, type of deal. But I don't think I did. I didn't do well. I started off okay and then kind of fell apart.
If folks are in a similar position and have questions about how to get involved, Nate Newby, of course, the guy to talk to about what's permissible and how you can get involved. And for the full schedule, we'll do a better job next week with the whole calendar of contests and whatnot. But if you go to santanita.com, there's some good information about the handicap and contests on there. Let's talk about this pick 5, JK. That is going to be one of the things I'll be looking at on Sky Sports Racing this weekend. Looking forward to that. They're going to keep me working late, which is good and bad. Keeps me engaged and puts dinner on the table a little late, but we can live with that. The pick 5 starts off at 5:35 Eastern. This is race 5 from Santa Anita. As I said, 6 furlongs on the turf this time, 3 and up, maiden special weights. And this was a race where I was interested in 2 runners in particular. The 10 Catarini I thought was very wide and maybe a little green on debut, one I thought should move up for a barn whose charge is typically improved second time out. But I also wanted to use the 3 Karolinka in this spot. I thought that was a solid debut run. The form of the debut has been franked. And again, normal second out improvement puts this one in the mix. So I was looking to get out of here 310. How did you see it, JK?
Yeah, I mean, those 2 are horses that fit for me. One that I thought was interesting was the 5 KP Can Do. Gets Flavian Pratt for Jeff Mullins. They don't hook up that often, so I think it's interesting that Jeff gets him on a first-time starter. And then the 8 of VC, we talked about it earlier, the 6 furlong turf. These horses are cutting back from that mile. I don't think it's the drastic situation that we came to know with the 6.5 down the hill, but I do think that you do want a horse that's going to be finishing. Out in California, a lot of these horses have been running at 5 or 5.5, and now they're being asked to run 6. And I think sometimes they could get a little bit late in those races. I feel like a VC being drawn towards the outside has a little bit of an edge. And one thing that I'll remind everyone about is the 6 and the 6.5. It feels like being down towards the inside is not where you want to be, especially on the 6.5. So keep an eye out for that. I would downgrade horses drawn to the inside, upgrade horses drawn to the outside. I thought the 5 and the 6, obviously the 5 and the 8 were interesting. And the 4 is another one. Majestic Steps, who's made a couple of starts overseas. Maybe this horse will appreciate our racing. One to consider. Gets Umberto Rispoli, who rides the grass extremely well in California.
Sure does that. If I asked you to grade the 5 horses you just mentioned into sort of main horses and backups, how would you split them? You'd mentioned the 5, 3, 4, 8, and 10.
Yeah, I mean, I would probably go like 8. 8 is like my top choice. Then maybe the 10, 8, 10, 4, 8, 10, 4. The Flavian Pratt thing is just kind of a feeling. I'd want to check out the workout report prior to making decisions there. But yeah, 8, 10, 4 is the way I would look at that one.
Gotcha. And leave the 3 and the 5 in as backups. Did you like my 3 enough to be a backup there?
Yeah, I wasn't mad at the 3 at all. The horse showed a ton of speed last time, early going shorter. So it's just hard to understand if the horse doesn't want to go this far, or did they just go too fast last time? Definitely one to consider, though.
Yeah, I was banking on improvement, but you're right. There are some other potential explanations. But anyway, that's how we'll draw it up for those of you getting the ITM Plus reports on these shows. Essentially, our too long didn't listen versions, and/or we take notes so you don't have to. Race number 6, Saturday, 6:05 Eastern. We are on the dirt, going 1 mile and a 16th, optional claimers and second level allowance. I was boring, I guess you could say. I was very interested to see what number 9 Shooters Shoot does in the return to the races. This is just very simple. Fast horse, chance to be the best speed, may have improved since last we've seen due to speed figure improvement for age. I wanted to give a little bit of a look at maybe a price to the 10 King Abner as well, another returnee with some old fast races, but I was mainly about Shooter Shoot in race number 6. How do you see it?
Yeah, Shooter Shoot makes sense off of the back form. The 8 Paladar, since switching to Richie Valtis's barn, has won 3 times, so obviously one you want to keep an eye on. Kershaw, just kind of an old pro. I don't necessarily like him on the trainer change, but he is one that if you're spreading in this race, and there's some other races later, I think that can allow you to do that, you'd want to consider. And then the 3 Tiz Magician is a horse I've never really been into. Always seems to take a little bit of money. All I really need in here is the 8 and the 9, and maybe a little bit of 6 just in case, just because he's kind of a hard-knocking older type.
8 and 9 as your sort of mains, and it sounds like you wanted the 6 as a backup. At the end of the day, what do you do with the trainer change on Kershaw?
Yeah, I mean, I just think that, you take a look at the workout report, see how that's going. The horse dropped last time and won. So that's, I like to think that's kind of a good sign when they drop a horse and they win. It just means that they got lucky not to, they got lucky to well, in some situations they got lucky not to lose him. In this situation, they did lose the horse. The horse fit where he was running, ran well, and could continue to improve off of that. But it's hard to say. Like I said, it's probably one that I would want to use defensively as a B type.
Gotcha. All right. So I'm going to just put you down with the 8 and the 9 on your top level and the 6 as a backup, unless you had anything else you wanted to throw in there backup wise.
No, that's it.
Let's talk about race number 7. We move on to our graded stakes action. This is the grade 2 San Gabriel Stakes, 1.25 miles on the turf. And this was a race where I wanted number 6, Another Twist of Fate on tickets. This one going second time off the long layoff, adding blinkers. And I just thought, frankly, it was a weird ride last time. And I just wanted to see again on the turf what Another Twist of Fate was capable of. And I figure if I'm using Another Twist of Fate, I have to use Count Again, who beat Another Twist of Fate. It's a weird day where the fractions weren't right. And like Craig Milkowski at Timeform US usually will hand time and put his own stuff, maybe because of rail position or other things. The fractions haven't appeared. I'm getting kind of conflicting data on what the pace situation might have been in that spot. Anyway, I'm going to try to move on with the 5 and the 6, but I want to include some others, I think, in here, JK, if you have a strong opinion, especially.
Yeah, remember, Another Twist of Fate had that big workout going into the last race, took a lot of money in the Seabiscuit, making his first start on the turf. So he's one that I'll consider, I'll use. The 9 furlongs, I think, actually probably help him out a little bit. Bowie's Hero is one that I've always just respected the heck out of this horse. Just thought he's a really cool horse as far as a West Coast turf horse. I can think of a couple of West Coast turf horses that I've kind of given respect to in the last year or so, him being one, Smooth Like Straight being the other. I worry a little bit about the distance. He hasn't been exactly his best at these longer distances. I'm not crazy about the outside draw. It depends on what his price is. If he's 6-1 like he is on the morning line, he's worth messing around with. But if he's, in one of those horses that gets bet down to 2-1 or 3-1 in a situation like this, I would probably steer away. The other one that I wanted to mention is Next Shares. He's just a quality horse. Often he needs kind of a certain type of racetrack with a little bit of cut in it. Sometimes he needs a little bit of a setup. But nonetheless, he's a quality horse who's competitive in grade 1 races. I think he'll be competitive in here. So those are the ones I'm going to use. Next Shares, Another Twist of Fate, and Bowie's Hero.
2, 6, 7. Just from what you were saying, it sounded like Bowie's Hero was a little more of a backup than the other two. Or are you thinking for pick purposes, before you can see betting action, et cetera, that you'd use them equally?
Yeah, it's just more about the price, right? And obviously at this point of the sequence, you're not going to know what the price is. I just want to keep an eye on the scratches, check out the workout report, and that'll either push me over the edge to make him an A, or it will be that kind of deciding factor to drop him back to a B.
Gotcha. I'm going to leave in as an A for now based on that. Race number 8 is the grade 3 Sham Kentucky Derby prep action in effect here, going 1 mile for 3-year-olds with 100,000 in the pot. And all eyes here going to be on Life is Good. This one had the form franked by White the Slates win the other day, broke the clock more or less. on debut and did so in very stylish fashion at 1-5. I was thinking single and move on. Might need to borrow your silver wig. JK, do you have it in the car there somewhere?
Well, let me see how much charge I have. Okay, I'm not ready yet, so I'll talk about this race instead of just saying life is good, move on. I think life is good is special. I think he's going to dominate this field. I love the outside draw for him. If he makes even a step of improvement, he'll win by 10. If he takes a step back, he'll win by 9. Single and move on.
Single and move on for both of us. That's an easy note to make. We won't spend any more of your time there. Let's talk about our nightcap, JK. Race number 9, 7:35 Eastern. I'll be off the air for this one. Going 6 furlongs on the turf. One that caught my eye was Sparky DeVille, the 7, getting back on the right surface. I thought would be among the best speeds. I like the fact that this horse can sit and pass as well. Seemed like there was a pretty strong case to be made for the 4, Masoot as well. Those were the 2 I like the best in the nightcap, 7 and 4. But I'll ask you, how are we going to get paid?
I only needed 3 horses, the 2, 4, and the 10. We talked about it. This is the 6.5 where they're in that turf shoot where it's really tough for those horses down towards the inside, especially horses that have some speed. It's a very short run to that kind of that first bend. Ghoul is the type of horse that's going to take back and go around anyway, so I have no problem with that at all. So I like Ghoul in here. I think Ghoul will be dangerous. You get Joel Rosario, one of the best closing turf sprint riders in the country. I've liked Ghoul in a lot of different spots. Even when he was running in in New York this summer, I kind of had a little thing for him. He was going 5.5 in all of those races. Now he's going to get a chance to go 6.5. And so I like Ghoul. That'll be my top pick. Masoot, I thought was interesting. This horse has run one of my kind of new things when you're looking at these 6 and 6.5 is a horse that runs well going 5 and also runs well going long. I think this could just kind of hit him right between the eyes. I think Masoot's one of those, gets Umberto Rispoli. And then to the outside, the 10 encoder. Remember I was saying the outside post positions, I think, kind of have an advantage, very similar to they did when they were going down the hill. And I feel like encoder to the outside with Sadler is sitting on an opportunity. He ran well in the Eddie Logan going the mile. The one thing I will say, and one of the other reasons I lean towards Ghoul, is Joel Rosario shows up there instead of riding for Ronis Racing and John Sadler, which seems like ever since Accelerate, anytime they have a good horse, those 3 seem to be on the same running line. So I thought that was kind of a negative for encoder that Joel wasn't there, especially for Sadler while Joel's spending his time out in California this winter.
All right, so 2, 4, and 10 for you, 4 and 7 for me in the nightcap. But let me just, since it sounds like you have a minute, you said something very interesting about the outside gates, preferring them. I get it going the 6.5 because of that like super sharp turn right out of it looks like it's less than 100 yards and you're turning. Why do you think it is with the 6 furlong races?
Well, I just think in general, having those outside posts is an advantage. I think from the inside, you're kind of rushed into things. And so it's just kind of more of a blanket statement for me that if you can get those outside posts, you're in much better shape than if you're down towards the inside.
Tactical advantage getting to at times in 1-turn races on the dirt. I've likened it to sitting on the button in poker for the jockey. You get to see how others play their hands before you play yours. But typically, I mean, in a lot of sprint configurations, though, if you're the speed of the speed, and it's not a dead rail, the more inside, the better. And you're not saying you think there's like a dead turf rail, or
No. I don't think it's the surface. I just think it's the configuration. I think it's the race dynamics, and what you have to do from the inside. If you don't have speed and you can't clear, you're going to be kind of under the gun. If you can take back and make one run, you can work out a trip there, but then you're pace dependent. So I just think everything kind of has to go right for you to be down on the inside. And I feel like the tote board doesn't always reflect that when looking at horses that are down towards the inside.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are knee-jerk saying, "Oh, they're worried. Oh, my horse from the 10, we could get caught 3 wide." And I suppose that is a concern if you're one of several speeds in a race who aren't particularly faster than the other, etc. But if you have the right horse that can tuck, sit, finish, I don't have any problem with the outside at all.
One of the things I've learned about the outside in turf sprints especially, and sprints in general, even dirt sprints, losing ground, especially in this day and age with some of the way these racetracks play, is so much less impactful than getting stopped. And at least when you're on the outside, you get clear run, you're not in behind horses, and you can let your horse run, and you can get that full run from them. But when you're down towards the inside, you get shuffled back, you got to go around, you got to wait for the hole to open, you this, that, and the other. You're just creating lots of obstacles in other post positions. So I look at it as a positive, very similar to Golden Pal. I loved him out there.
Yeah, I think you're talking, just to clarify to listeners too, one turn turf races. 2 turns,
absolutely,
it's different ball game. It's very
turns,
hard to be. Yeah,
two turns on the turf. I default to inside horses that are going to end up getting pocket tucked in trips, save ground on both turns, and kick. Now you got to play for them to get clear, but
they have a lot more time to get clear too, though. That's another part. Clear,
and their turn of foot in a 2-turn turf race means more and is more impactful even at the 8th pole than it is in a 6 furlong turf race, because you're running the entire time. You don't have time to just get out late and kick home. You can get out late and kick home, but you're still gonna have a quarter tank of gas in the tank that you didn't get to use to put you in a better position.
The race, the dynamics at the 1 turn just tend to be much more attritional, as opposed to being about either sustained pace or that quicken, that quick burst. So that's the reason for any of that. And I think during that discussion, JK, the first part of it, I could hear out there in the world a bunch of sheet players crossing us off next year's holiday card list. But then when we got to the 2-turn turf races, they put us back on. So you'll be getting that. You'll be getting that in the mail. Don't worry. Anything else? Any closing thoughts from you on Santa Anita or anything else going on in the world of racing or your life?
It's January 1st, 2021, and we talked about it a few times last year, wrapping up or late in the last couple of episodes. But want to thank everyone for helping us get to 1 million downloads on the main feed. Right, that's just the main feed. Doesn't count
in the calendar year. Main feed in the calendar year.
In the calendar year, 1 million downloads, and obviously in the world of ESPN and Barstool, 1 million isn't some of the numbers that they're doing. But in horse racing, it's pretty spectacular.
Yeah, I think Portnoy had 1 million downloads in the time it took you to complete that last sentence. But it's different when it's specialized, and I think we've shown that in the impact we've been able to have with some of our partners. So yeah, thank you so much to everybody for that, and thank you, JK, for being not easy doing this stuff from the road, and I appreciate your added effort to make this happen today, as do all of the listeners. That's going to do it. I thanked everybody. I thanked everybody we needed to thank. That's going to do it for this show. There is one guy I need to thank, and that is producer Craig Gorbanoff. Huge part of the development of our company over the last year. Really appreciate all his hard work, always pushing the right buttons. But now that's going to do it. This show's been a production of In the Money Media. Our business manager is Drew Coatney. Our chief creative officer is Jonathan Kitchen. I'm Peter Thomas Fornatel. May you win all your photos.